Lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Seamus O'Regan, terrified, absolutely terrified that Alberta may run away or pull out of the CPP. And he says, the Alberta Federation of Labour released a report on the Alberta government's plan to break up the Canadian pension plan. It outlines why the majority of Albertans don't want to leave the Canada pension plan and why an Alberta pension plan would be their savings at risk. So he's very, very concerned, and he wants you to listen to him. I don't know that there's 9 of these. We'll read a couple, but I feel like he's going to go into mistruths or things that aren't true. So let's see. First, Albertans are getting a good deal with the CPP. No, they're not. Every Canadian who pays into it is. Nope. Because provinces don't contribute to the CPP, working people do, and what working people get out of it doesn't depend on where they live. It depends on what they pay into it. Alberta is a young province today, and when a province has a younger workforce, they contribute more to the CPP on average. That's temporary because those workers will age and stop paying into their pensions. Then Albertans will receive more than they pay in on average. The very idea of an Alberta pension plan is built on shaky ground. Quebec has its own pension plan. Why is the Quebec pension plan not built on shaky ground? Why is Quebec not subject to these risks of an older population and a younger population? If they have an older population, can't they just import a younger population? Seamus? But Quebec isn't doing that. Quebec won't do that. They won't import them because they don't want to ruin the culture that they've got there. Isn't that interesting? Right? Anyway, I don't think I'm going to read the rest of his stuff there, but fundamentally, he's throwing everything in the kitchen sink at everybody who's paying attention and willing to read his rhetoric, that Alberta doesn't want this pension plan, that actually the CPP is a great deal. And I don't think so. I don't agree. I was trying to grab this link, and when I hit the space bar, it started recording. But here's the World Economic Forum CPP investments. I just want to make sure that everybody understands. They've got billions of dollars, $500 billion invested in the World Economic Forum. The government does. And the government, if Alberta says, I need 50% of that because the Alberta Pension Fund is, has ownership of 50% of that, that's going to impact things. And it's going to make the CPP fund insolvent in a way that it's not going to be able to do this. But I mean, I'm sure they'll find a way to park the funds that aren't needed right now to make them money, right? But at the same time, it's a very interesting response when Alberta is making moves to pull their funds out of the communal Canada pension plan and make their own. And this is the response. Wild stuff. Pierre Poilievre is pointing out something I shared yesterday. In 2015, and again this year's budget, Trudeau promised to cut high-priced consultants, and yet spending on consultants has increased by another $3 billion to $21.6 billion this year. On Tuesday, he'll repeat the same promise. He can't be trusted, and it's not worth the cost. So there you go. He's predicting what Trudeau is going to say in the economic update, and that's interesting. Everybody's speculating about what's going to be in the economic update. And I think it's pretty obvious. They're going to make promises that they're going to break in a couple of months, only to tell us in a few more months after that they didn't actually break the promise and Canada's on track. And look at that inflation rate. It's at 2.8%. Right, Chrystia Freeland? Laurie Goldstein says, beg your pardon? Trudeau says his government has always exercised fiscal restraint as Poilievre pushes for balanced budget. Finance Minister Freeland will present the government's fall economic statement on Tuesday, promising a responsible fiscal plan. She has never delivered a responsible fiscal plan. Not once. She asked for $2 billion to give to a company that doesn't exist. And then she got pushback on it, and I still don't know if she got the money or not. National Post says Trudeau says his government always exercised fiscal restraint fiscal restraint. No, they didn't. They've never exercised this fiscal restraint that they're talking about. Here is the National Post, and they're just talking about the same thing. And here is highlights of the fiscal restraint that Trudeau has exercised. Trudeau has added over $600 billion of inflationary debt, more debt than all prior prime ministers combined, doubling our debt. He's flooded our economy with easy money, which has bid out the cost of goods we buy and the interest we pay, says Poilievre. On top of that, he's brought any massive carbon tax on gas, heat, and everything that's transported by truck. The consequences have been devastating. Yeah, and this is not fiscal restraint. The the money sent to Ukraine, the borrowed money sent to Ukraine, the borrowed money sent all over the world to pay for ridiculous things like posters for not pooping on beaches. This is not fiscal restraint in anybody's definition of it. So Justin Trudeau making a claim doesn't make it true, and that's just how it is. Here's Dan McTeague, and he's talking about inflation, and now he's worried that there's signs of deflation, and he's responding to his October 25th tweet. He says, fuel influence on inflation numbers. Unless something changes Friday, gas prices across Canada for October 2023 will ring in 11 cents a litre lower than October 2022, when diesel and distillants are 55 cents a litre lower. And then he says, let's see how close my prediction comes to the inflationary reveal next week. I fear that with the ETF route in energy markets, this lower inflation number is nothing to cheer over. It's a sign of deflation, proving the Bank of Canada got its aggressive rate raising wrong. So not great, right? If you make a misstep and let's say you had an opportunity in December 2022 to lock in your mortgage and then and lock in at like 2% or something like that, right? So lock your mortgage in, you've got the payments at 2% for 5 years, something like that. Lock in at any time, it's no problem. And then you don't lock in, right? And then the mortgage rate goes up to 4 and then 5 and then 6. And now your payments are a lot more, right? And you lock in when your mortgage renews at 6% instead of 2%. That's a 4% error. And you can't just like go back and undo that. You have to eat that error. You have to just grin and bear it because you screwed up. And the country is doing that now. We are making decisions regarding our finance that is going to screw us, and we're going to have to just eat it. And I mean, housing is an example of that. The interest, the inflationary rate, the price of rent, all of those things are consequences to the bad governance and the bad policies that have brought us to where we are. This is mostly liberal policies, mostly, and globalist policies. So just so we're clear, globalist policies. Here is what's going on in Japan. Crypto Neko says Japan financial crisis, financial collapse of the Japanese yen. And this guy is saying that I think this guy kind of nails it. He's got a whole thread of what's going on a little bit. But in this one, he's talking about the why, or the potential motivation for why. Okay. So cheap labor is attractive to governments because more jobs means they can sell jobs to people, but also taxes for them. Right. So what it looks like is they're trying to lower the price of labor and increase the number of factories. But here's what Emin says. This is a translated tweet. He says, naturally, the dislocation itself will further accelerate the depreciation of the yen. I can't believe that these people are implementing this policy without knowing it. They're trying to bring Japan down to the level of Southeast Asia. If labor costs were to reach the level of Southeast Asia, many factories would certainly be built in Japan. So the government is pursuing, Japan's deputy finance minister promises that they will JPY intervention if excess volatility, but we won't intervene just because the yen is weakening. So weakening the yen is what they're trying to do. And that's being noticed by the population, and the population is saying, why would they want to do this? And that's why they'd want to do this, to increase the factories, increase the labor, because increased labor, lower costs, stimulates the economy in a way, builds jobs, blah, 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 blah. But I think that it's just another route to the same kind of monetary management stuff that's going on in the West and has been for years, right? It's part of the same end goal, part of the same plan, right? Based Gaul goes into Weimar, I'm saying that wrong, Republic, Weimar Republic? I'll go with Weimar. So I've been reading quite a lot of history. The history is very interesting. The history that I'm reading is seeming to be independently verified by different sources talking about events from different perspectives. In one book, these events are discussed from the German perspective. And I thought it was very interesting how much these events line up to what's going on now. And this is the collapse of Germany and the rise of the Weimar Republic, and all of the things that the circumstances that led to 1933 Germany, and all of the stuff that happened with regards to that. And it rhymes. What's going on now is the same thing as what's going on then. Here's a thread talking about that just before we talk about Canadian governance, because I think it matters to know this history. It matters. Based Gall says, in America, the public is given zero information on the Weimar Republic, the period in Germany post-World War I that led to the rise of the National Socialists in 1933. This is deliberate. That period holds too many secrets to the modern world. This thread will expose those secrets. First, a tweet on what Germany was pre-Weimar. As the Holy Roman Empire ended, Germans united throughout the 18th and 19th centuries under strong leadership, loyal monarchs, and good governance. Germany was a bustling European center of industry, military culture, and Christianity. Then World War I happened, largely orchestrated by corrupt global interests. It was a disaster for Germany. Germany had a string of victories and sought a peaceful truce, but global financiers behind the war would lose money and their agenda, so they called in America in 1917. It's true. This is just one of the very unbelievable things that happened. Germany basically won the war in 1917, but the globalists didn't want to admit they lost, so they called in the United States to turn the tide. Anyway, it's wild stuff. Carrying on. How the war ended is crucial to setting the stage for Weimar. The German war effort collapsed in 1918 when communists led strikes in munition factories and launched a violent revolution in Germany. The monarchy fell, the war ended with no truce, and liberal elites created Weimar. Before I go into who comprised the new liberal elite in Germany, first a look at who was behind the revolution. And it goes through a list of people and who they are, which is just a little bit too broad to get into right now. Back to this. At the Treasury of the Treaty of Versailles, a crippled Germany was carved up by global elite with no opposition from the new Weimar leaders. So they installed their own leadership and they carved up the country, and they got rid of the patriotic people and the leadership and the royalty. They got rid of it all, and they put in their toadies, and the toadies got rich and they carved up the land, right? Back to this, and setting the stage for exactly what happened next. Who were the key representatives letting this happen? Paul Hirsch, Otto Landsberg. And they were, and then again, it goes through a little bit of history with them. The term Weimar comes from the city of Weimar, where this new liberal democratic government was first assembled. In this unnatural, fragmented Germany, a new constitution was foisted on the people. Who wrote it? Hugo Preuss. And who is he? Again, you can look into the information about Hugo there. For nearly a decade, this government was overwhelmingly run by left, liberal, non-German influences, and then it lists the names and goes into their history. For the 70 or 80 years leading up to Weimar, left liberal socialists had been wreaking havoc across Germany, preventing the people from knowing real peace. Who were the earliest leaders? Ferdinand Lassalle and Leopold Sonnemann, and who they were. And the early years of Weimar were filled with turmoil and suffering. The people weren't organized. The extreme left launched frequent rebellions. There were food shortages and poverty. France invaded Germany in 1923 to 1925 to collect World War I reparations. It was an absolute mess. The ineffectual government was often embroiled in scandal with one group at the center. The Barmot scandal and listing a whole bunch, all involved Jewish crime rings scamming Germany with political corruption, bribery, fraud, war profiteering, etc. Accompanying Weimar's broken political world was an equally sick and degenerate culture and society. Everything was tolerated. Berlin became the sin capital of the world. Many poor, desperate Germans sold themselves like cheap goods. No sexual perversion was off the table. At the center of the sexual revolution was Magnus Hirschfeld. He created the Institute of Sexual Research, located in Berlin, celebrating all kinds of sexual fetishes, conducting trans surgery, research, etc. Does it sound familiar? This all happened before in Weimar, Germany. The German film industry was also filled with degenerate themes. Some of the main producers and directors in Weimar. The pornography business also became extremely popular and lucrative during Weimar, often taking advantage of German women looking for work. People like Kurt Tolstoy made sure everyone got their fix. Art in Weimar experienced a similar descent into meaningless, perverse works that inspired nothing but sadness and discord. Dadism and Cubism were all the rage. the elites promoted this as intellectual and modern. Sound familiar? Even prominent photographers like Erwin Blumenfeld sought to inject subversive anti-German themes into their work. Here's one of his photos. Can you see what he was selling, even all the way back then? Something similar to what they're selling today, right? So here it is. There's a picture of a white woman and a black man, right? And it's called Black and White, 1930, right? So there you go. German media, much like today, collaborated with the political and social elite, ignoring the plights of everyday Germans and the complete degradation of German culture. Who ran the major newspapers and publishers in Weimar? No Germans. Yeah. Weimar hit rock bottom when the U.S. stock market crashed and the global Great Depression followed. Somebody was saying that the reason Weimar did not last longer is because of the stock market crash, because the reality of the starvation, and he says this here, the reality of the starvation, they just didn't know how to deal with it. And the people who actually knew how to produce things became important again, right? The degenerate society was wholly unprepared. Unemployment, starvation, disease, currency collapse, stacks of German money were often worthless. There was wheelbarrows to buy bread. It was crazy. The Weimar nightmare was complete. Throughout Weimar, Europe learned the horrors of Bolshevism to the east, yet communism paraded openly in Weimar with official parties in the government. Same as in Canada right now. The Weimar elite seemed unable and uninterested in protecting Germans from their revolutionary cousins. Perhaps this explains why, when one man and his movement rose from obscurity, promising a return to power of the German people, a return to tradition, morality, hope, he received radical hate from the establishment, but fanatical love from the German people. Now you know the truth. So there's a lot of parallels to what's going on now, and even with parallels to people trying to fight this and being demonized like Trump, right? So who knows? But what's going on now has happened before. And history, like January 6th, like at the end of the show, I'm going to show you, like January 6th, the official line is this was a violent insurrection. But if you watch those tapes, there was no violent insurrection. And so what is the true history of the last 80 years, 90 years, 100 years? I think that maybe we're going to find out, but maybe it's going to be another 100 years of lies. And either is equally plausible, in my opinion, at this point in time, because people have fought this, and people have fought this communism and won to a degree, but then 2023 happens, right? Or COVID-19 happens, or, there's a swine flu, or there's some kind of economic collapse, or there's something, and people get distracted and they don't understand what the actual fight is, because they think the fight is the economic fight or the space race or the this or the that. But the actual fight is something very, very different. And if you start to talk about what the actual fight is, well, that's Islamophobic. Okay. It's very anti-Mark. Very anti-Mark. Okay, let's talk about Canadian politics. And I think that we were talking about
Both
Canadian
the Prime
politics.
Minister.
I didn't push a button there. The computer's just listening to me. I think we were talking about Canadian politics. I think a very real outcome of the policies that these people are enacting is what happened in the Weimar Republic. Is it exactly the same? Is it going to be exactly are you going to need a wheelbarrow to carry cash around? No, they're bringing out digital IDs, right? Like they're bringing out central bank digital currencies to make sure that these collapses don't happen, that all the economy is managed at every point, from inception to end point. And like, if you need to have your credits expire to make sure that our economy runs, well, that's the greater good, right? Like, you understand the economy is bigger than you, right? So that's what's happening here too, right? It's just a little bit different. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you look, it's there. Here's Chrystia Freeland talking about how, protesting is really important, but just don't protest. Just don't protest the Canadian government. If you're protesting the Palestinian government or the Israeli government, no problem. You can protest all you like. But if you protest the Canadian government, that's terrorism, and I will freeze your bank account. Here's Chrystia Freeland.
Both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre, they've seen a number of instances this week where they've been chased out of venues, rallies disrupted, Benjamin Netanyahu making comments about what the Prime Minister had to say about the conflict in the Middle East at this point. The question they're asking is, what do you make of protesters targeting federal leaders? And do you think Ottawa's position on the conflict has been diversive as a result?
So, thank you for the question. The right to protest is essential to the democracy that we are all so lucky to live in Canada. It's important when protesters exercise that right that they are respectful of the work that everyone in Canada needs to do, whether it's the leader of the official opposition or the Prime Minister.
What? What does that even mean? It ignores her behavior. It ignores the fact that she's frozen bank accounts and demonized people who were just trying to come to Ottawa to discuss with her and her prime minister the policies that were wrecking their livelihoods, right? In the country that they live in with the leaders who work for them, and they got demonized. But this, protest is really important and everybody's got to recognize the work we're doing. What? It means nothing. It's fluff. Absolute fluff. Rebel News again is reporting Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow is warning of a very difficult winter because of the dramatic increase in refugees coming to Canada under the Trudeau Liberals. Chow says the city will spend $200 million by the end of the year, but it simply isn't enough. Right. She's saying here that there's a 50% rise, 50% rise in refugees arriving in Toronto, and she's going to spend $200 million, and that's still not enough. I can't believe a plane wouldn't cost $200 million. I'm sure you could put them onto a plane and take them back to home, close to home, right? Here, you're most of the way here, right? Have fun. See you later. You could take them home, and then it wouldn't cost $200 million. And we wouldn't have all sorts of people who are dependent on the state, not just this year for that extra $200 million, but every year they're here in forever, them and their kids and everybody else too. Can we afford it? Well, the answer is no, of course. But here's Olivia Chow to beg for more money anyway, because money is endless from the money tree of the Canadian government, I guess. Here's Olivia Chow.
Coming into the country have dramatically increased by 54%. We have to collectively do more and understand those housing activists.
When she says do more, does she mean deport them more quickly? Do more to prevent those refugees from coming? 54%? What? That's insane. And nobody's thinking that's insane. Everybody should say 54%? Where are they going to live, Olivia Chow? We should put them on a bus, put them on a plane, and fly them back home. Because as far as I'm concerned, the government is supposed to work for Canadians, and Canadians can't afford housing. Never mind people who are just showing up, who are refugees, who are saying, oh, we're very needy. Okay, well, guess what? We have needy people here already as well, so we can't help you. We're sorry about that. 54%? This is not a plan. This is a plan to bankrupt this place. That's not a plan to help anybody. This is a plan to harm everybody. It's like if you're swimming and your raft is almost sinking, and if another person got on, the raft would sink, and then somebody's swimming towards you, right? Like you have to say, listen, man, you can't come up here, and if you come up here, I'm going to punch you in the nose. Or if you try, I'm going to punch you in the nose until you're going to sink right there, right? Like at a certain point, you have to say no. Find another raft, buddy. This one's full, right? Find another country. This one's full. Here is Olivia Chow. I'm going to continue with what she's saying because I think there was one more little bit that I wanted you to see. Here we go.
That are very concerned as the winter arrived. I've also opened up first time a respite center, 24/7 respite center. So between more beds, respite center, warming center, rent supplement, so that at the end of the day, it will be 2,400 people going in. It is a comprehensive package. And we still need the $200 million to deal with the existing refugees that are already in our shelter. It is going to be, if nothing happens, I foresee a very difficult winter. And I don't have all the solutions, but I'm doing my best.
What nonsense. Doing my best to beg for money, to house people who have just shown up, who you don't have a responsibility for? I just don't get it. I don't understand why the country, our country, doesn't assert itself, the province, the city doesn't assert itself and say, here's the math of this insane non-plan. If this is a plan, it's not to help anybody. It is to harm everybody here and the unfortunate souls who arrive here too, because eventually this all collapses. Like, this is not a plan. It is a plan. Well, it's not a plan to help people, that's for sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful